Odette, thank you for playing with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So I'm really stoked that we get to talk to you because I know you have an older child that has special needs and then you have your twinnies. And although, like when reading your bio, I kept thinking like, okay, we could talk about this because I do love the whole rolling the dice again and having more children after you had a child with some issues. So there's that whole bravery issue alone. But I thought that it would be really beneficial because I would love to say you're the only one in this situation, but you know that you're not. It's not that common, but it's not so uncommon that this is a wasteful conversation. So I would love to know a little bit about your older child and your children and how your pregnancies went and all that good stuff. So tell us about tell us about your family.
Okay, great. So, my only unplanned child was my first child. My husband and I were engaged. I'm Armenian. We were planning this big Armenian wedding, and then I got pregnant. So that was not great for the fam. But I was like, you know what? We're talking about one day versus a life. Like, let's just push it back. It's not a big deal. So we had her. I was 41 weeks. I almost got induced, and then she came like a day before, and she was 10 pounds, 11 ounces vaginal. So she was a very large baby. And at the time, they just thought, oh, I'm 6'2". So they thought, oh, you're tall, your husband's tall. This is normal. They didn't think anything of it. She did have a slight heart murmur, but again, they were like, everything's coming back normal. I did the genetic testing when I was pregnant. Back then, I did not know they only test for the very common stuff. They don't test for anything like ultra rare. So everything was fine. She was the first grandchild on both sides. So nobody really, I didn't have any other babies to compare her to. So I just thought everything was developing fine. Then, through play dates and stuff, I noticed around 2 that she wasn't speaking. So I was like, maybe we should look into speech therapy. And of course, the pediatricians, like 10-minute visits with her once in a while, were always like, she's fine, she's great. Like, okay, I'll just take her to speech on my own because I think there's something off. So we did speech for a year and she said like 2 words. So then it was like, okay, she needs, more support or more testing or whatever. At 3 years old, then I got pregnant with my second daughter when my first daughter was 2. So right before she turned 3, my second daughter, her name is Penelope. The first one is Victoria. So Victoria was about to be 3. Penelope was born. And I'm taking Penelope to all the, doctor's appointments, psychiatrist appointments, psychologist appointments, developmental pediatrician appointments, speech therapy sessions, and then they diagnosed Victoria with autism. So I was like, okay, great. We have an answer. Like, let's get the ball rolling on all the other things she needs, support she needs. And one of her first appointments they wanted her to have was with a neurologist. So she goes to see a neurologist. The neurologist says, I don't think your daughter actually has autism. I think it's something else. She's too, she's really into adults. So, and I thought, again, that might be normal because she's the first grandchild. She's used to being around adults, whatever. So she's like, she's too like the hour appointment with the neurologist, she was doing everything they wanted. She didn't have like any tantrums or whatever. So she's like, usually if it's like true autism, we would see other behaviors show up. But we do see she has delays. There's like other like physical markers, like she doesn't really grow hair on the sides of her head. So like she just has kind of like a curly hair mohawk at all times. So anyway, then she said we should do some genetic testing. So we did that. It was a cheek swab. And then they called us back for a blood test. So at that point, I knew something's showing because obviously they don't call you back if it comes back clear. She was diagnosed with this thing called Pallister-Killian syndrome. It's, from what I hear, extremely rare. 200 kids in the world are known with it. But it could get misdiagnosed as autism because of the delays and other behaviors that it comes with. So that's her second diagnosis, and we've kept the autism diagnosis. So that's her situation. She's now walking and talking, and I'm very, very glad we didn't find out about the Pallister-Killian syndrome till she was almost 4, because the life expectancy with that is like most kids die before 1. So had I known when I was pregnant, I think I would have been like very stressed her first year. So I was like, actually, this is great, because what a blessing. She's already lived till 4, and she walks and talks, which is more than most kids. I mean, she's not talking like neurotypical, but she's still talking. She still communicates. So anyway, so that's that. Then, of course, as a mom, I blame myself thinking, what did I do? Like, this is my fault. And then Penelope's growing up, and she's not even 2 years old, and she's like reading books. So I'm like, okay, so here we have one kid who, I mean, Victoria had all my attention at all times, like every sort of baby class you can think of, we did together. And then Penelope was basically like a sidekick at all these doctor's appointments meeting. Like, she didn't really get anything for herself in the first couple of years because of all the other appointments for Victoria. And she was like thriving. So I'm like, you know what? This right here is proof to me that like, it doesn't, if this is how they're meant to be, this is how they're going to be. It has nothing to do with me. Obviously, like, helping getting the therapies and stuff, you know, I help with that, but she was born the way she was born. It has nothing to do with how I raised her. Yeah. Yeah. So, uh, exactly. So, and then through our church, they have like a special needs moms group. So I was able to join that group, and that's like really helped too. So just a side note, highly recommend if you can find a group like that. And then, so we have our 2 girls. My husband wanted to go for a third, let's be honest, probably for a boy. He says he didn't care. So then we're in 2020 now. So we got pregnant in September. We found out we were pregnant beginning of September. We got COVID September 15th, had a miscarriage September 30th. So all in 1 month, we're like, we're pregnant. We have COVID, miscarriage. So it was super bummed out. Like, it was kind of like I mean, the baby wasn't like that far developed, but I miscarried like in a way where we like were holding. It was like really traumatic. So it's okay. So well, then I go see my doctor, and she was like, oh, it's probably like, we don't say it's because of COVID, but there have been higher instances, whatever. So she's like, if I were you, I'd just wait 1 cycle and then you can try again. So waited 1 cycle, try again. We find out Thanksgiving, we're pregnant. So she said, the next time you get pregnant, just come in right away. We'll do all the checks. Cause I was thinking, if it's my 3rd pregnancy, I just want to go in 1 or 2 times and call it a day. Cause I'm like, I've done this before twice. And my second daughter was like 8 pounds, 11 ounces. So she was big. So I was like, I already know I'm having big babies. Let's just like go in for the 2 like required ultrasounds. And then, so I go in for the first appointment in November. They're like, yeah, we see a baby, everything looks healthy, just, you know, come back like at the whatever, like 12-week mark or 14. And that was Monday morning, right after Thanksgiving. I go home and I started bleeding again. So I was like heavily bleeding for 4 days. By Tuesday night, I was like, this is another miscarriage. Like, I'm so over this. Like, we already have 2 kids. Like, let's stop doing this. So they called me on, like, they over the phone told me, like, you are having another miscarriage, but we'll see you probably back on Friday to confirm, like, you don't need the DNC and whatever. So I go in after I'm done bleeding on Friday, and they're like, oh, you're still pregnant, and actually there's 2. And I was like, what? I was just bleeding like pads and pads full for 4 days. And they're like, well, it's probably like a leftover blood clot from COVID. So, and I was like, but last week you told me there was, or on Monday you told me there was 1 baby. And they're like, well, yeah, well, now we're seeing 2. But they were really far away from each other. Like, usually I guess the twins are, these 2 are really far away from each other. So she was like, to be safe, it looks like you have 2 babies. So to be safe, I'm going to say don't have sex at all, like nothing down there at all, because it could like aggravate the blood clot again, which could then lead to the miscarriage. So I'm like, okay. And she's like, are you mad? And I'm like, well, I'd rather have two babies and two miscarriages, but this is not what I was expecting, like it was such a rush of emotions because I was like telling my husband, like, I'm going in to confirm that, like, I don't need, like it was just like such a crazy week. And then like of course I was at that time my husband couldn't go with me. So I was just like trying to process by myself. Yeah. 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 Yeah, so my doctor says she saw that in her whole like practice. She's like she's been around for a while. She's like, I've seen this one other time, but it was only with one baby. So I've never seen it with two. So I was like, well, I guess like thanks. But like, and I'm so used to hearing how rare things are because of my older daughter. So I'm like, yeah, just like chalk it up. Don't give me the odds anymore. Cause like at this point, I'll probably fit into that. Like, yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, cool. Um, so the pregnancy was worse than the first two, and I blame it on my son because it was a boy girl twins. I had only ever carried girls, so I was like, maybe my like body just likes girl hormones. But I was really, really sick, like more than ever before with this pregnancy. And then I was obviously older, so I'm like, I don't know if it's my age or if it's that there's two, like whatever. But I carried them all the way through. There was one instance where like I had to go to the ER because I thought I had preeclampsia, but it was just like a moment of loss of vision, I guess, and not anything else. So that was good, I guess. And then the I was going in like, at the end you go in all the time and they were saying that my son was at the bottom and he was like butt down. So I was gonna have a C-section. That was scheduled for like 37 and 3 days on a Monday. I went in for my last ultrasound and they're like, oh, somehow they've both flipped. So they're both head down now. And I'm like, okay, of course. So that was Thursday. So I'm like, can I just try to have them vaginal? Because I have two kids at home and my special needs daughter needs a lot of physical intervention when she gets angry and sometimes she'll just get angry and then take it out on my younger daughter, which is two at the time. So I'm like, I don't want to not be able to do that as my husband's going to work because he works at a law firm and they don't really get time off. So I'm like, can I just try to have vaginal so like I can actually recover? And I know I have big babies, so I'm probably not going to be able to carry these twins in my arms if, we do the C-section. So they're like, you know what, you can try it on like midnight Saturday going into Sunday. We'll try an induction. And then if it doesn't work, we already scheduled for the C-section on Monday. So that's that. So it was great. We went for like a last date night, dropped off the kids with my in-laws and went to the hospital after our date, got induced, and they both came out vaginal. My son came out first. My daughter was very excited about the extra room, flipped around, and she was a breech delivery, but whatever. But it was nice to like not have to once my son came out, she was like, well, usually we do a C-section here, but because she said I had a proven uterus, then she would pull her out if I wanted her to. So that was that. And my son was 7'9" and my daughter was 6'11". People people were visiting our people were visiting our room being like, you had twins? They're like two normal babies. And I'm like, yeah, but yeah, so that's we rushed out. So we had them like Sunday night, like almost midnight. Like I asked them to put my daughter out so they could have the same birthday, like faster. And we left Tuesday morning. So they said they would typically like us to stay longer because it's twins, but we got a text that my 2-year-old had pink eye. And so I was like, I need to get out of here and like tend to whatever somebody got. So yeah, it was a lot of like that kind of like, we got to just move on to the next thing because we don't have time to like really settle in every moment, you know? He says he didn't care, but I know he's thrilled. You should see how they are. And he's like 15 months old, and my husband's like, my boy, blah, blah, blah. But he's definitely like the girls have a special bond with him. So I think he has the best of both worlds. He's a girl dad at heart, but he still has a son to do like the stuff with, you know? Yeah. Yeah. She's 7. She's 7. Yeah. Yep. So my Victoria, so the oldest one, Victoria, she's in special ed first grade now. So the nice thing about special ed is the bus here picks her up right from our door, brings her right back to our door. So that's like a few hours a day where I don't have to be concerned about transporting her. However, usually at least once a week, she'll have a doctor's appointment. So like today at noon, I'm picking her up early from school to take her to a doctor's appointment. So that's just like built into our life. Penelope is definitely like the least attention requiring child. We could just put her like at the table with a math book and she'll just do like math by herself. So she's like, I feel like we needed her for this balance of our family because then the twins came and it's like, no matter how easy they are, there's still 2 of them. And so that's the thing. A lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, the twins are so great. They're so easy. And I'm like, but there's 2 of them. So like my son Luke will sleep through the night, but then Christina's up all night teething. And then the next night they flip flop. And it's like, there's 2 of them, you know, like, so, and then Victoria, her chromosome like variation affects her wake times. So if she hears the babies at 2 a.m., she's up at 2 a.m. So that's another layer. It's like 5 out of 6 people in the house will be awake like all night. So that's like, we're pretty tired, like often. We have started giving Victoria like a little, like 1 milligram melatonin if she wakes up before 4 a.m. because that way she's exhausted at school. So we wake up, get her ready, get her off to school. Then, I mean, the twins are usually just playing or screaming at us for something. They don't really have words yet, but it's a lot of just like scream talk. And then Penelope will just like sit there and like cover her ears and be like, they're loud. So like, yep, it's chaotic. But, and then with the twins, I really had to like, so because of the miscarriages, and I did a lot of research, I listened to a lot of Twiniversity podcasts, I figured like the chance of me having postpartum depression was like probably 90% or higher because I had the miscarriages, plus I had the twins, plus I have a special needs kid. Like there's so many layers that while I was pregnant, I got a postpartum doula like in place. I had my therapist like that I was meeting with regularly while I was pregnant in preparation for having the twins. And then once I felt I needed medication, I talked to her about it. And then like my gynecologist and her like figured out what I needed medication wise. So that's like, I feel like there's some things where it's like you can kind of prep for success. And I wouldn't say it was success, but I definitely got through it. Of course, there was a lot of crying, a lot of hard nights, a lot of, I don't think I could do this. Like, why did we have twins? Like, and for us, like it was spontaneous twins because we don't have it in our families. So it was just like, oh, well, you happen to be old, tall, overweight, and you just had a miscarriage. So all those things lead to like higher chances of twins. So I was like, great, like so happy to hear that. But like, I don't know if I can handle. So I think like prepping all of that stuff really helped like afterward. So then we also started interviewing nannies while I was pregnant, got one in place once the twins were born. And then we actually last week had to fire her because she was drinking on the job. So that was that. And I was like, so we had, I mean, she has been with our family for over a year. And my sister-in-law was getting married last weekend. We got her a room at the hotel next to us so she could watch the kids so we could enjoy the wedding. She had like a 2-hour break between when we left for the ceremony and when we brought the kids back to the room. And in those 2 hours, she drank $120 of alcohol and then charged it to our room. So she kept saying she wasn't drunk. And then the bill came the next day and I was like, clearly you were drinking. That's the first, I mean, I don't know. I think so. I don't know. And I don't know if this is just because it was a Friday night and she was at a hotel and by herself. I don't know. It was whatever. It was a really bad judgment and it was more than enough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's been a curveball, which which we weren't expecting. But it's also like I feel like in the moment, like I cried like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like I was like, she's part of our family. Like it feels like somebody died, like whatever. But then now seeing how it's like playing out and like we now are rotating like 3 babysitters, so nobody's fully alone with them at all times, except a grandparent. So then we also the grandparents weren't helping at all before. Now we have like my in-laws helping. They're retired, so they help, and then my mom helps like when it is available in her work schedule on Wednesdays, Fridays. So it's crazy how much better it is, and I'm like, I was like so sad, and that's how I felt like when I, was sad about having twins. And now it's like our family wouldn't be this great without the twins. Like it's like everything seems so tragic in the moment. And then like even 1 week out now, I'm like, this is the best thing that happened to our family because the twins are happier. And like I didn't realize that one of like our daughter, Christina, I think she was not being physically abused, but kind of like emotionally, and she cried a lot. And I thought like, oh, she's just a cry baby. And now the last week and a half, she's so happy. And I'm like, maybe there was just something off with her. Like maybe it felt because she would always say how Luke was her favorite. And like now looking back, that was kind of a red flag. You probably shouldn't have a favorite if you're a nanny of twins. So anyway, there was a lot of red flags that I ignored thinking like, oh, well, I don't know better. And like my therapist was telling me like she kind of convinced me I couldn't rely on anybody else except her. So I think that also had to do a lot of like that feeling of like, how am I going to do this? But now I'm like, it's so much better. And like, yeah, it's just, I feel like just taking like day by day, literally day by day. And now looking back to how I felt on that Friday night when we first fired her till now, I'm like, this was the best thing that happened to us and the best. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. 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 Mhm. I would say 50-50. So depending on, like, let's say if it's a birthday party, if it's a close friend that knows our situation, that knows how Victoria can get sometimes, and it's not bad, but it's just she might have like a sensory overload moment, and bite somebody, like who's ever the closest. Like it's just like there's stuff like that that happens where it's or even just her communication with other kids. It wasn't as noticeable when she was little, but now as she's getting older, you know, there's girls in first grade that are like sassy and attitudey and whatever, and she does not get any of that. Like she's like, "Hi, can we color?" Like that's it, you know. So it's, I feel like if we're going to a place where these people know her and know her abilities, she's fine to go. But there have been times where I'm like, you know what, it'd be easier if we just split up. My husband takes the big girls or the twins, and I take the big girls or whatever. Penelope has like her special things she does, like dance and soccer, but we schedule those at times that Victoria has therapy. So she does at-home therapies 4 to 5 days a week. So Penelope used to think these were like special treats Victoria was getting, and she still sometimes thinks that. So we have scheduled her like dance class during horse therapy because Victoria is so like excited about horse therapy that Penelope, like, what am I missing out on here? So we've been able to schedule that stuff and just have like, my father-in-law's really gotten into the horse therapy thing. So he takes Victoria to that while my husband takes the twins on a run and I take Penelope to dance. Like, it's just, we're just making it work, you know? And then like, yeah, if my in-laws go on vacation, then we adjust. Like, it's just, I feel like if people know about Victoria and her abilities, then we take her places. But and then some people, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like if we were invited to a first birthday, we just take the twins because I don't have time to explain to all these other parents what's going on with Victoria. You know what I'm saying? And I learned it the hard way, but before the twins were born, because she was, you know, 6 years older than the twins. We had tried to do things with her where it was like we're like trying to fit this like what how do they say, like the square peg into the round hole. It's not working, and it's frustrating for her. It's frustrating for us. It's fun for nobody. So we kind of learned that early on, and now there are things that like are public events, let's say, where nobody knows us, that we do take all of them, but we just keep a very close eye on Victoria. And it's funny because people will be like, "Oh my gosh, you have your hands full with the twins," and I'm like, "You have?" Yeah, like, but it is what it is. Like I'm trying to. I never thought I would have a special needs kid, so I'm trying to like embrace that and being a twin mom. And you know what? It's made Penelope a lot more compassionate toward kids in her class that aren't at her level because she's like, she's 4, but like I think she's gifted because she's beyond her age. So I think it's a good thing. Like I think the twins, once they're a little older and they realize, you know, what's happening, and it also makes me less worried. Like my son is I don't know if this is like obvious for everybody, but obviously speaking less than my daughter, obviously walked later than my daughter, like his twin sister, you know, it's like, so
Yeah.
the differences are so obvious. And I'm like, it wouldn't be the end of the world if he had to go to speech therapy. Like I'm so used to that stuff now where I'm like, who cares? And we've been talking about one day like fostering, and I'm like, I would foster a disabled kid because I know the system. Like I know the DDD system in Arizona so well that I'm like, I could do this for another kid, you know, and usually those are the kids that aren't finding homes. So Anyway, but
That's unbelievable. That's
long story
unbelievable.
short,
But if you think about the things, you really are in a position because you've learned so much, be it the hard way or just through experience,
mhm.
that who better to handle these things? Now, I have
Yeah.
another question. When it comes to thinking about that and handling things, what's the food and dinner situation like? Because I would imagine with Victoria that if she has sensory issues, there might be a texture issue. And then you have picky eaters. How do you handle that?
So we serve everybody the same thing, but there's a lot of swapping that goes on during the dinner. So Victoria prefers only the carbs. Her favorite thing is like bread and cheese. And so I don't have any bread in our house ever because that's all she would eat. And then she gets constipation issues and then that leads to GI problems. So she has a GI, but now we're seeing her for other things. So it's like, I don't want to add, I already know the bread causes her constipation. We're not having bread. So we'll have like, let's say rice, chicken, vegetables. Everybody gets the same thing, same portion. And then Penelope will like trade her rice for Victoria's vegetables and like they'll trade stuff like that.
That's so
So
smart. And you're cool with that. You're just like, whatever.
as long as people are eating, I don't care because I'm not going to serve something. Okay, I try not to serve something
Yeah.
that's going to cause her issues. Yes, there are times where we're like, we're just going to eat McDonald's and that is
Yes.
what it is. But if I'm making the dinner, it's like the rice is going to have like a pound of olive oil in it. So there's no way it's going to like form into a large clump in your body. Like, you know, something like that.
Yes.
Like, it's like, I just try to make it work. And then funny enough, Luke, our twin son, eats the most out of every kid. So he'll get all the girls' leftovers. So whatever nobody eats, it's dumped on his tray.
He's just compost. That's his
Exactly.
nickname in the family. I support it.
Yeah, I'm starting to use our Costco membership more now that I see how much he's eating. And
Wow.
he's 15 months old and he's 35 pounds. And
God bless this kid.
huge. Yeah. So I'm like, if this is an indication of life, we're going to be, good thing we only have one son because that would be a lot of food money.
Could you imagine if it was you had 4 boys instead? That would be, listen, it is what it is. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm so happy that you figured out all these strategies for your family. And I don't know how you balance it. And I know everybody says that, but you're doing it. And it's very inspiring to know that there are other people like you out there that can listen to this and say, yeah, we're, a crazy family too. And we have these special situations and circumstances. And I also love how you are unapologetic. Like, this is us and that's it. And do you think that it took you some time to feel that way? Do you think that it was therapy or just time that made you feel that way?
I think both. In like the Armenian culture, it's not really great to like talk about disabilities or whatever. And for a long time, my parents, or especially my mom, were like, don't tell people about her. Like, don't. And I'm like, how can I go in public and not? It's noticeable. Like, I'm not gonna, like, she was upset about the initial like diagnosis part too. So like, we shouldn't have done that in her mind. But it's like, I feel like being authentic, it's like, take it or leave it. Like, if you don't want to be part of, if you think the twins are too much, some people think our twins are too much. If you think they're too much, this is what it is. I'm not going to like tie them down because you think they're running around too much. Like, this is how they are, like, this is how Victoria is. And there have been, it's sad to say, but there have been friends that have told me, I would love to have a play date with you and Penelope. And I'm like, but what about my other 3 kids?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, it's just a lot, with all 4 of them. Okay, well, then we're not coming. Because like, it's one thing if I make the choice to not bring the other, but if you're only inviting my one gifted child and not the rest, you can see yourself out.
Yeah. And it's also basically she's then putting you in a situation where you now have to find childcare.
Exactly. Or leave all 3 with my husband. And it's like, that's not fair.
No, that's really not fair, but it happens. I mean, honestly, it happens a lot. There's a lot of people, especially if you have twins in a singleton or vice versa, that either they'll just want the twins because they have the twins. But typically, if you have the twins first and people kind of get used to the chaos, the singletons are easy after that. But it is. I mean, we've had, when my twins were born and my son had a lot of issues, we had that happen. My my daughter got into a school that wouldn't accept my son.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I don't understand. They're like, we can't take him. And I'm like, okay, then you can't take us, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just friends, unfortunately. It's schools and other stuff too. And I love that you are kind of taking the bull by the horns, and you are just such a good spokesperson, not only for giant babies, but for parents with differently abled kids. It's unbelievable. Odette, I'm so glad that you're a part of our family. And I'm so glad that you listen to the Twiniversity podcast. I still can't believe that people actually listen to this, besides my mom. But I think my mom only listens because she could ask Alexa to play the Twiniversity podcast. And so she just plays it in the house. So that's one download I get a week. I get very, very excited. But Odette, I'm going to leave all of your information below for people to come and stalk you. And also they could always email me at communitytwiniversity@twiniversity.com if they have any questions. Odette, thank you so much for playing with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Don't be ridiculous. And guys, like I said, if you have any questions, you know where to find us. If you don't want to email us, fine. We still love you. You could send us a direct message on any social platform. We're just at Twiniversity pretty much everywhere nowadays. And if you're like, what can I do for you, Nat? You know what you could do? You could rate and review this podcast, because that 1 star from that one woman who says, all I do is yell at my dog, still haunts me to this day. So feel free. You don't even have to give me 5 stars. I'll take 2 and just be like, all Nat talked about was Odette Giant's babies. I'll take it. I don't even care. But just let other people know, because if you give us a good rating, other people could find our podcast, and moms like Odette could find us. And that's how you got here in the first place too. All right, kids, thank you for listening. Go back to doing your regular lives, and see you later, alligators.